Hello, everybody. Good morning. I hope we're doing good. So we wait for, good morning. We'll wait for others to join. Let's give them like an extra, say 2 minutes. Don't worry, would take some extra time to make up for the time that we've lost. All right, guys, let's start. So I have some messages here. Oh, sorry, I didn't see this on time. Good morning, Osaruke Asedu. Good morning, Pleroma. I did not see this on time. So let's just get into the class and we'll come back to your question. Okay. All right, guys. So during the last class, we did some CRUD operations. All right, and I told you that the CRUD represents all these methods, right? If you are posting, you are creating. If you're getting, you're reading. All right. If you're patching or putting, you're updating. And if you're deleting, you're deleting. All right. So that's CRUD for you. But then we used a storage mechanism called variables. So we're using variables for our storage, which is something that we've been used to, for a while now. We know that variable is a container for values, and that's what we've been doing. So we've been writing to our array. We've been retrieving values from it and so on and so forth. And assignment I gave was centered on this class, based on what we learned. So today we are going to take it a step further by taking our database from here and putting it in a file. So we're going to be persisting our database in a file. All right. Now, why do we need to do that? The reason why we need to do that is so that we don't lose our changes. All right. Because if you keep it like this, and I know that a lot of you might have noticed, if you keep it like this, what will happen is, as long as your server is not restarted, right, the updates will be working, you can retrieve, and everything will be good, as long as you do not restart your server, because that variable is like a session, right? So that variable will only be um, unchanged, or as long as that session is still alive, that variable is going to be updated, all right? With regards to whatever you have done, to it, whatever operations you have performed on it, it's going to be updated, and you can make use of it. But immediately you restart your server, let's say you turn your server off and on, you're going to lose those updates, and the database will go back to the default value that it had, all right, when you started the server previously. So that's why we need to persist our updates. All right, what I've just explained is like, many years ago, we were working with Microsoft Word when it did not, have that auto save feature that a lot of us enjoy now. Many years ago, working with Microsoft Word, if you don't save and your computer goes off and it comes on again, when you turn it on again, you are not going to see the update that you made, right? You're going to lose all your updates, okay? Because that storage was in the RAM, right? All these your variables and all these things we're doing, they're going to be in the RAM. RAM storage would be, responsible for holding it. But if you turn off your computer and turn it on again, or even stop the session, when you stop a session, it's like you're turning off a server. Right? What I mean session, so if I run npm start, we've started a session now. So when I say session, it's not something mystical, but I've started a session like this, so our server is running, right? As long as this server is running, everything we do is going to persist, okay? But we are storing them in, memory. When I mean memory, we're storing them in the RAM, so it's just going to be there. It's going to persist as long as the server is on. I told you during the last class that you should think of servers like physical computers, right? So as long as that physical computer is on, everything in the RAM is safe, right? You can access them, when you copy a value, for instance, when you do Control-C and copy, that thing you just copied is in the RAM, all right? If you turn off your computer and turn it on and you try to Control-V to paste, you won't see it again. It's lost, okay? So the same thing happens here. This our variable is in the RAM, right? So as long as the session is on, the computer is on, the server is on, you can make use of it, you can access it, you can retrieve, you can add values to it. Nothing happens, like you don't lose anything. But as soon as you stop your server stops running. So in this case now, I just turned off the server, right? And I turn it on again. Every update I made during the last session has been lost. All right. So that is not that is not an efficient way to store data that we want to be persistent. Okay. So what can we do? How can we improve this solution that we have currently? We can go a step further by persisting it to file. All right. So every operation we do, we are going to be storing the effect of that in a file. All right. So that's what we're trying to do in today's class. So I'm going to, should I use the same file, or should I create a new project? I'm going to create a new project. So let me just copy the content of this file. So console. So we create a new file. We'll say jokes API. So let's say FS file system jokes API. Okay. So just indicate that it uses the file system. All right. So make directory and then FS jokes API. And I want to open that up. So I'm going to close this and open this. All right, so we have our folder, our project folder. All right, so now I want to initialize our project. So I decided to create a new project so that I can redo some of the things that we did during the last class for those who did not get it. So this is going to be mkdir. No, I already made directory. So we're going to do npm init, right? -y. And then we have initialized our node project. So this is now a node project. All right, so I have a package.json and I want to add a start script. So I'm going to say start, and so it requires double quotes. And I want node mon, and node mon should run server.js, right? So I'm going to save that script. We can't use the script yet because we don't have nodemon installed. So I'm going to install nodemon, npm I nodemon. And if we run that command, we should get nodemon installed. Okay. So that worked. If you check your dependencies, you see we now have nodemon. And then if you check package.json, sorry, we now have a package lock.json, all right, which is like something that keeps track of the packages we have and the versions. Then we have our node modules, all right? So that's basic. So we can go ahead and create our file now, server.js, and create a server. So how do we create a server? Let me zoom in a bit so that you see the code well. All right, HTTP, yeah, equals require. So we're requiring HTTP, all right? So I want to pause here and explain something. So when you require, there are a lot of things happening behind the scene. But do I go into that now? No, let's just continue our flow. Let me not break the flow. So HTTP, I require HTTP. So HTTP is a core module that we use to create servers. So I'm going to get another variable. We'll say server equals to http.create server. And then we know that we should put our handler here, which is going to be a callback. And that callback is going to expect a request and a response. The request is the first argument that will be passed into it. The response is the second. All right. So it's very important that you know that you cannot just say rec, all right, because request is going to be passed into the first. So request response. All right. And then you will use any name. This is just a convention. You could call it anything you want. You could call it incoming, outgoing, whatever you like, but convention, you know, you want to stick with that because every code base and almost every code base and company that you work with will be using res. All right. That's like a convention in the JavaScript ecosystem. All right, so we have our server created, and then we can listen for the request to the server. Like I said the last time, you create a computer. That's what I've done now. You just clone the computer, and then you want to turn it on. That's what you're doing with listen, so that you can actively receive instructions, you know, and act based on it. Okay. So we're going to pass in the port. The port is 3000, and we don't need to specify the host name. We can just put a callback. So I'm going to say console.log. No need. NodeMon is already logging for me, so I'm just going to put an empty callback there. All right. So now let me check if our callback is even optional. So let's see. We have a port undefined, then we should have a listener. Okay, I don't think it is optional. All right, doesn't look like it's optional from the documentation. Recent methods coming, so you can do more research on that, but then I'm going to leave it empty for now. So then we'll come here, and this is where we write everything that happens, all right? So how do we undo our request? Everything will happen in this function. So like we did during the last class, we might want to make this, separate. So we'll call it just a function handler, all right, or request handler, whatever you want to call it. So this was going to be, in fact, let me just paste this. All right, so handler is going to receive request and response, and then put it here. So that's it. All right, so let me just say create server, and then activate server, or listen or requests. So you know what's happening there. Okay, so we'll call this is like our receptionist. When somebody comes to our office, who deals with them, right? When there's a request that comes in, who deals with them. So handle incoming requests and respond to them. Okay, that's what you do in this function. All right, so now we want to create our database, right? Hey, I think I've lost that thing that I copied. All right, so we want to create our database. Let's do that. So I'm going to open my terminal and say torch. Make directory db. So if I say ls, you see we have a db now. All right, and then I could torch jokes.js, all right? And if I go into db and ls, no, in fact, ls, we have jokes.js in this folder, but that's not what we actually intended to do. So what we want to do is to, let's go out of here, and let's see jokes.js, ls, so jokes.js is no longer there. So I'm going to now db and touch jokes.js, all right? So if we check now, we have jokes.js. So what I've done now, for some of us who are not familiar with it, I'm using the command line to create my folders, all right, and work. But if you are not familiar with that, you don't need to really bother yourself about it now. So what you can do is just come here and create a folder and create your file, all right? You can do it from the UI. Okay, so that is it. All right, so let's continue. Now that we have our DB, I want to go back to here and npm start. Okay, so my server has started. My server started, right? So what we want to do next is now read the content of our file. Okay, so I want to read the content of our file. So this to deal with files, we need a core module called fs. All right, so I'm going to require fs. Now, in some code bases, you would see node colon, http node colon fs. All right, they do the same thing, but there's a functional difference between them. This is just specifying that this is a core package of Node, right? That's what this is doing, saying that this is a core package of Node. So Node is going to skip the catch and stuff like that. So you can research on the difference between using node colon the package name and just using the package name on its own. Okay, you'll get more information on that. So what do we want to do with FS now? I want to be able to read a file. We want to be able to write to the file. That means update the content of the file or update the file with content. We want to be able to append to a file, right? That means you are directly adding more um, updates to a file. All right. Writing is like overwriting everything that's in the file. We'll get to that. Then appending means you are trying to add content to the file. And then we want to be able to delete the file. All right. All these we'll be able to do with the FS module. Okay. So for the FS module, I'm going to be employing the assistance of the docs. So we're going to say FS. All right. So let's see. FS means file system. So we're in the right place. So now the first thing we want to do is to be able to read files. So I can search because I know what I need. In fact, it's here. All right. So this is it. Read file. So I click on it. And then to read a file, we need to pass in some options. And what are they? This is file handled or read file. I'm not sure that's what I'm looking for. Let's see. Read file. All right. So is that what I'm looking for? So yeah, this is what I'm looking for. fs.read file. All right. So then we need to pass in 3 arguments while making use of it. Okay. So what are those arguments? The path to the file. All right. Options, which is optional. How we want to read the file. All right. And then the callback. Okay. So let's make use of this in our code. So I'm just going to copy this and we'll go back to our code. What I want to do is create. So I'm going to say const should we use const? Let's use const. So db equals right fs.read file. But now this is going to work asynchronously, but I don't want it to work asynchronously. I want to load from my database before every other thing happens. So yeah, that's what I want. That's how I want my own program to run. So I want it to be sync. All right. So I'm going to use read file sync. This is the synchronous version of read file. Read file is asynchronous. All right. So for the synchronous version, I just need the path and options. I don't need any other thing. I don't need a callback. Callback is mostly for asynchronous code. All right. So I'm going to get rid of the callback and my path. What is my path? It's going to be slash db slash jokes JSON. All right, that's the path. So we can, I think it will be safe to now console.log db. Let's see what happens. All right, so if I save, you see that we have a buffer. So if we can check here now. Just look here where my cursor is. We have a buffer returned to us, right? But then I want it to come in the UTF-8 format. Oh, that's correct. All right, so it's coming back in that format. Now we cannot see anything on the console because there's nothing in our file. All right, so let's add something to our file. So we could say, let's just say working, all right? Let's just put working there. But that's not a valid JavaScript stuff, but then you could still see it logged to the console. So if you check, you see working logged to the console now, all right? So we are loading the content of our file and then saving it into DB and then logging the DB to the console, all right? So now let's write proper JavaScript here. So we're going to just do an array, all right? And if I save, you see that we get an array now, all right? So I do not want that semicolon added to it. So what I could do is make this a JSON file. So let's make this a JSON file. So when I save, I don't get that extra semicolon. I'm going to make this a JSON file, and I would need to remove the semicolon, and now I can update this to JSON. So my code works again, and then you see that we have an array printed there. All right, so that's our database. So what we're doing is that we work with this variable, and then we send the result, all right? After every operation, we'll take what we have in DB and persist it to this file. All right, so that's what we are going to be doing. So let's slow down a bit and try to perform one request. So we want to do a get request. So I want to do a get request. No, let's do a post first. What are the post requests? So what I said, I told you during the last class and even today that when you do post, you are actually creating. All right, that's post. You are creating, something. So we want to create a joke with this endpoint. Okay, so we're going to repeat many of the things that we did during the last class. So we say if request dot URL is equal to /, right? And and the request dot method is equal to post, all right? What do we want to do? Okay, so we want to say body. So let's is that let now? Let body equals an empty array, right? And request dot on data, right? When there's data, we want it to do something. All right, so when there's data, take the data. It's going to come in as a chunk. All right, one part of the data. So it sends in one part of the data per time. By now this should be obvious, but I like stating some things that are obvious because most times you discover that a lot of persons do not get it, right? They tend to forget the concept so easily. So that's why I like we mentioning, these things. All right. So what we do, we name it chunk. We can name it anything, but we're naming chunk so that it makes sense to anybody reading our code. All right. So we say body.push chunk. So we push the chunk into this array. And after that, that keeps happening as long as there's a data that comes in from the request. And we say request dot on end. So when data stops coming from that request, or when we're done reading what is sent from the request, what we want to do is we want to be able to pass that body, all right, to JSON and store it. So how do we do that? So we take all the response, so we can call this, can give this a variable name, let's say passed body, okay? Be equal to buffer.concat. All right, this is going to join all the buffers that were received together. All right, so body, because they're all stored in the body array that we have at the top, and then says to string. All right, so this is it. And then the next thing we want to do is to add the joke. This is a post, right? So at this point, let me pause and let's just console.log past body. So let's know what we're doing per time. So if a request is made to So we need to under client and we want to make a request. And say post and we send the body. We'll say the name of our joke is not so hot. So let's send a request and see what we get. So you see now we get a not so funny joke. Can you see it in our console? So our endpoint is working. A not so funny joke. All right, so let's go back. We are console login at this point. Okay, so I'm going to call this joke equals. Do we even need to? Do we need to? Do we need to? Do we need to? Do we need to? Well, just to be sure. Yeah, so we're storing, actually, this guy is being stored in JavaScript land. So we read it, it's in JSON format, but as soon as it came into this JavaScript, it would work as JavaScript, right? So what we want to do is that everything we're storing inside of it, let's just make it JavaScript. All right, so we're going to do JSON.parse. That's what we use for that. Okay, and you turn that to JavaScript. So you pass in the parsed body into JavaScript. Okay, and then after doing that, we want to save it in our project. Okay, but before we do that, you know that when you call endpoints, for instance, let's go to the jokes API and let's see how this works. All right, so when you call an endpoint, where DAO send request, let's see. So you call an endpoint, most times you get an ID. You see this ID 18, right? This ID is automatically created, all right? So you do not get IDs from your user. Like you won't expect the person who is trying to create that data to provide ID like this and say ID 1. No, they will not identify, your data for you. You will be the one doing that. You should have control over your ID, all right? So you don't accept IDs from a user. Even though the user passed an ID, you ignore it and you will make use of it, okay? So we're not accepting IDs from user, all right? When we talk about schema validation, you will know how we would be able to avoid a situation like this, okay? So what we do is that internally we handle our IDs ourselves, right? You can decide to create an incremental ID, or you can decide to create IDs using random strings, okay? But in this case, we actually want to create an incremental ID, all right? So what we'll do is we'll try to check if, so let's do this. So let's try to get the ID of the last item in our array. Please always know that this guy returns what? It returns the content of the file, JSON. And in this file, we have an empty array. So therefore, what is being stored here is an empty array. That should be always clear. So when you see this code, just think of it as an empty array for now. All right? Or think of it as the content of whatever we have here. And in this case, it's an empty array. So now I want to check if that array is not empty. All right, so here I'm going to check. I can do if, so let me do something very primitive. All right, then we'll optimize the code. I'll say if db, all right, dot len is greater than 0, all right. What I want to do is I'll say, let's create ID was 0, for instance. All right. So if is greater than 0, what I want to do is to update ID to, so I'll say ID will be equal to db, all right, dot length So db.length minus 1, all right, plus 1. So what have I done here? What's happening here? So what I'm saying is that the ID should be 0, all right? But then I'm going to check if the length of the array is greater than 0. That means there's content in the array, all right? I want to update my ID, okay? And I want to update my ID to become, right, whatever we have in the index of the length of the DB minus 1. So if the length of the DB is 1, right, and I say minus 1, we're going to get 0. Remember when we did arrays, I give some of these illustrations. So DB0 would now be the first item in the array, all right? So if DB.length was 3, for instance, all right, and I say minus 1, that would be 2, all right? So the index 2 would be the last item in the array, okay? And I'm going to add 1 to it to get my new ID, okay? If you take a look at it, when going through the video again, it should make more sense. So this logic is popularly used to get the last item, the index of the last item in an array. All right, so that's what I'm doing here. All right, so I'm getting that, the last item in the array, I'm getting the index of it, and I'm updating to 1. But if there is nothing in the array, that means this returns false. It means that this code will not run, and therefore the ID is going to be 0. All right, so the ID starts at 0. So if I might want it to start at 1, I'm going to make this 1. All right, so if this is not true, that means the length of the array is not greater than 0. We will not run this code, so the ID will be 1. All right, so now let's go. So whatever we receive from the request, we're storing it in joke, remember. So now I want to form an object. All right, I want to form an object. So that object, so this is JavaScript. All right, so we want to form a new object. So we're going to say, in fact, let's just say joke.id will not be equal to ID. All right, so we're updating this object with ID. So at this point, let's just console the log joke. So I'm going to zoom out a bit so that we can see much of the screen. All right. All right. So let's make a request again. So if I make a request, you see now that we have name, not so funny joke, ID is N1. Why are we getting N1? Let's check to see. Yeah. So I want to get rid of one of these logs. All right. So let's be clear what we're saying. So we run that, we get an also funny joke N1. All right. So why are we getting N1? So I'm gonna say console.log. So this is how you debug facts. And I'm going to run the request again. And I see that the ID we're getting from here is new line 1. So where's that new line coming from? Let's see. Go back to our code. We're getting new line from where? So let's do db.length minus 1. Let's log this. Let's see what that would give us. So if we run again, we're getting new line. All right, so the new line is coming from here. All right. So db.length minus 1. db.length is what? So let's try db.length. Let's see what that is. I'll make my request. That is 3. How come? Maybe the length cannot be 3, so there's a bug somewhere. There's a bug somewhere. CDB. The length. Where are we? Where are we? Where are we? On FS Jokes API. So let's log DB. So, so this is what DB is giving us. All right. So therefore, we have a new line here. We have a new line here. And that new line is being forced on us by my prettier. So let me try something. So this is not part of the class. This is because of my own extension giving me an error. Prettier, let's see. Right. Or prettier.ignore. I think it's, so let's check prettier ignore. So ignoring code. So in case you come across this, you can resolve it yourself. So I know that you have something called prettier ignore. And that's what I should be creating. So I want you to ignore everything inside DB. Do not, all right, or ignore JSON. So let me just do DB and JSON. Okay. So don't format JSON for me. Let's see if that works. Save, yeah. And I'm good. So let's try make a request again. And we're getting the right thing. Ah, Lord. Okay, so why do I even have quotes there? I shouldn't be having quotes. So I should come back to my server and I should be using joke. All right, no. So read file gives me DB and I should be JSON pass that. So if you come back here, I should be getting so let's go back here now and see. All right, I'm going to clear my console. Restart. And let's make that request again. And also run a joke ID1. So let's get DB. Let's move this. Let's see. Okay, so it looks like DB is not just on the pass. Okay, okay. That's coming back empty. I think I'm fine with that. All right, so let's proceed. So our code is working now. All right, so what we'll do is joke. Let's now log joke to the console. And if you click, you see we now have ID1. All right, and that is what we need. We have updated our object with an ID. So the next thing to do, now because this is a live class, we debug and then, have to do all that. It's not edited. So you are most likely going to get caught in the web of my debugging. And you should learn from it rather than being confused. And then when you go back to the videos, everything should make more sense. All right. So we're just going to proceed. So now that we have our object, that's where we are at now we updated our joke with an ID. The next thing to do is to push it to our DB. All right, I want to push it to our DB. So what do we do? How do we do that? We say db dot push. All right, we're going to push into that DB now. And we have joke. So now let's log DB instead. So let's try if it will work. So the first time we'll create a joke. We get, so you see it's now an array that has objects inside it. So that's the first object. The second time I create another joke, let's say another not so funny joke, and oh, I can't send a request because that's still hanging. So we need to provide a response. So instead of console login, let's even respond. So let's do rest.end. And we know that we should JSON the stringify because you cannot send JSON directly, you only send strings. All right, so if I come here and make a request, you see that we have this, right? And then if I say not a not so funny joke and send another request, you see that we now have two jokes, right? And this is supposed to be joke 2. So now we have a problem. So I have to debug what that problem is, all right? So let's check. So what did we do wrongly? So here we're getting db. Oh, we're getting db. If db the length greater than 0, we're getting db length -1. So we get the index of the joke, right? And then we're supposed to say .id. All right, so if we go back again, now that we refresh the server, you will notice that there should be nothing in the object. If I make a request, you see that that will be the only guy in the object. And if we go again, another not so funny joke, and send the request, we should get 2. All right, so our ID is now updating. And that's cool. That's cool. So now, so far, we've not even done anything really new, right? The next thing to do is now to persist this data. How do we persist this data? So that when our program refreshes, we don't lose the data that was saved so far. All right, so how do we persist? So we'll come back here, and that's where read file. It's almost 12 already. So, and that's where write comes in. Okay, yeah, that's right. So let's go to the documentation and we're looking for write. So let's say fs.write. All right, write file. All right, so what does it require from us? It requires the file that I want to write to, and then data, and then options, all right, and a callback. So you see an example here. All right, we want to write data. This is a data that is being formed from a buffer. That's not what we want. What we want is to do something simple like this. So let's copy this, all right, and then go to our code. So at this point, before we give a response, we want to write a file. So we'll say write file, and we'll put a callback here. All right, so let's go to the documentation. Our callback should be looking for something. So our callback is a function that I think it returns an error, only error. Let's check, let's still go down. So it gets an error, yeah. So if there's an error while writing to the file, that error is going to be stored here. So we come back, we account for that error, and then console the log. So if error, let's say if error, right? If error, want to console the log error, okay? else. We could say write successful, but let's not do that. Let's just, and then I think I can make this a one-liner. So let's start getting it to use the code like this. All right. So what we could do is message.txt. That's not the file we're looking for, right? The file we're looking for is db.json, right? So let's get that. And then what do we want to write to it? We want to write the content of DB, but we have to make it JSON compatible. So that's why we do JSON.stringify and then DB. Okay, and then it, I'm going to leave it like that. And yeah, if there's an error, that error happens. So what we want to do is, yeah, persist that. So let's try. Go back to our request. And in fact, let's just do this quickly. Let's create a quick route for, so this is for post, right? Let's do a route for get so that we can use that. So I'm going to say get if rec.url equals / and rec.method is equal to get. What do we want to do? We want to res dot end, right? JSON.stringify. What do I have there now? DB. Okay. So that's all we want to do. So let's try that. So if we come here and change this to get and say send, we get the content of that. If I use a post and send to the data, we have an error. So let's check what our error might be. So write file. So I'm sorry. Write file comes from the FS module. So let's update that code. All right. So we say fs.write file. All right. So yeah. So let's try writing to file and it worked. Let's try reading from the file. And it worked. That's super amazing. So if we check our file, we see that we have this content in it. All right. If we go back here and try to create another post, let's say first not so funny joke and just send it. So we got this. And if we get, hopefully it works. We got it. Oh, that's amazing. So if we check our file again, you see that it has been updated with the value. All right. So we now have a persistent database. It's a funny persistent database. Okay. So we can actually do writing, we can do reading, we can do deleting, we can do, so it's just logic. You just have to sit down and think about the logic. All right, so now let's do something. Let's do something with update. Now update is going to be more technical, but I think I should say this at this point, right? I tell all my students, and I think I might have told you guys before, at this point, be comfortable. Yeah, it's me taking the class. So at this point, be comfortable with getting confused. Like, I don't know how to put it to you guys. And if you can take this one advice, it's going to make a lot of difference to your career as a beginner developer. I see a lot of persons come to Slack and then they post out of frustration. The truth is that we know you are frustrated, right? But posting out of frustration does not even help the next person help you, because they don't receive your message in the right way. And then they cannot genuinely respond to you in the right way. Forget those official, technique that people use and say, oh, I'm sorry, how do I help you? How do I come in? And it is just official. People do it officially, right? But the way they perceive your message the first time is going to determine how they will be willing to help you. All right. Some persons have come to my DM and say, oh, I need you to explain this for me. I need you to do this for me. And because of how they came, I am able to really assist them because I know that, oh, this person is going through a genuinely difficult problem. All right. But there's a way you will come and it's like, it gives a wrong, impression. Like you're trying to pass another wrong message. We can still assist you, but not as much as the person who came with the right impression. All right. So it is general. This thing happens generally anywhere. All right. So don't try to pass aggression to the next person, even if the person is a student or a tutor. Be comfortable. Programming is confusing. So be comfortable with it. Become like, sit down and understand that I signed up to be confused for a few months. And then when you have accepted that, when you are confused and you have an error, you will now have the right disposition to inquire on what went wrong. Okay, and that's what programming is about. And the truth is that you will get from one level. So after this level of confusion, you would break through it and then you understand all these things and it begins to make sense. And you're like, oh, wow, it makes sense. You will now get to another level where you have to learn something new again and it's going to be confusing. I remember as a JavaScript developer, already coding basic JavaScript stuff. When it was time to learn promises, I was confused. Like, what is this again? In fact, there was a point when if I see a new update in JavaScript, I am angry. I'm like, what now? I never learned the one way they finish it, bring me one. Like, got a point, I wanted to learn about iterators, I wanted to learn about generators. I'm like, what is this? What is this? Confusing. Mind you, this is somebody who is very comfortable writing JavaScript code, right? But then there's a feature that exists that we needed to learn and it was confusing. So I was at that point in my life where my first disposition is confusion and anger. When I see something new and it's confusing and I can't wrap my head around it, I'm like, what is happening here? But I learned fast that is not the way. That feature of JavaScript is still going to be like that. It means that you have to humble yourself and learn it the way it is. If you decide to be confused, that's your business. That feature remains like that. And this applies to anything you're trying to learn in the world. NFT. Why are people buying something this useless? How can NFT have value? Like, what is the value in NFT? It is nonsense. It is this, it is that. Okay? People are still buying it. So you now have to humble yourself and say, okay, let me learn what this thing is about. How does this translate to value? That's how you learn. All right. So get very comfortable with errors and with confusion when you're learning programming. And you ask, that would prompt you to ask questions. All right. And then you will get answers and it becomes clearer. All right. So take your time, go back to the video, watch it. If you are confused, you can reach out to me. You can always reach out to me. That's the truth. You can always. My DM is wide open. All right. I'll respond to you. If I need to even schedule a one-on-one call with you, all right, I'll schedule a call with you. I don't do that with everybody. I will try to know what you have done on your own, all right? Have you searched the internet? Have you tried YouTube? Then if I see that, oh, this is a genuine problem. And sometimes when you come to me, I know that, oh, this is something that can get somebody confused. No matter if you have searched YouTube or if you have watched the tutorial before, you could still be confused. So I could say, well, let's book a 15 minutes call for so and so time, and we get it resolved. All right. So don't get confused, but don't get angry at yourself or at anybody. All right. And try to vent out that frustration because it's a normal thing. Every programmer gets confused at some point. Okay. So let's try to do something here. Should we append there? Should we append? So let's append. Let's try to append. To append is to patch, right? So patch. Some will use put, some will use patch. Now that I said this, you can go online, use ChatGPT, Google Gemini, say, what's the difference between patch and put? And you get your answer. No confusion. All right. So if I'm gonna copy this and put here, the request equal to this, but the method is patch. All right. So this get, this is post. Well, I could decide to copy this whole logic and then just do some updates, but let's do it from scratch. All right, let's do it from scratch. So what we want to do is to get the body. So say let body equals this, and then we want to listen for data in our request body. So how do we do that? We say rec.on. All right. So you can read about event emitters, right? In Node. Okay, so this is what we're doing. On data, right? When there's data, we want to so this is like, just to mention, right? This is like JavaScript events. So when you do your elements.add event listener, all right, that's like the version for Node, right? But in this case, we have request and say on. You would have said click or something like that, right? But in this case, we say on data, right? And then what do we want to do with the data? Okay, so it's a chunk. We know it's a chunk that will come in. We want to body.push. All right, that chunk. Okay. So we'll push that to the trunk, and the next thing we'll do is, in fact, sorry, I said I'm going to show you something that will make your coding life easier. The pseudocode. All right, I think I've used it before. So the first thing we want to do is we want to store the incoming request body. All right. And the second thing we want to do is update the body with chunks. All right, from request. And then third thing we want to do is, after we update that variable, all right, we want to give it an patch. With patch, we want to determine the ID, right, of the ID of the data to be updated, right? And then we want to search for the data in the DB, and then we want to update the data. All right, so let's see. Store incoming request, updates with chunks. So listen for when chunks have been fully read. All right, and convert it to JSON. We convert it from buffer to JavaScript, all right, and then to string, all right. Yep. Okay, so this will be 4, this will be 5, this will be 6. All right, so this is how you would normally solve problems, okay? But in my case, I do this in my head most times. But when you meet difficult problems, it might result to this. Okay, so this is the first. Right. All right, so let's see. So we've done update the body with the chunks. All right, so on data, we'll update the body with the chunks. And then we want to listen for when the chunks have been fully read. So we say on end, right? We want to do something. Was that we want to say past body is equal to buffer dot concat. All right. So I want to concatenate everything we have stored in the body because they are all buffers at this point. So body and then convert it to string. Okay, so that's what we're doing here. All right. So past body, we want to, I think it is, so we'll const result, should I say result? JSON result equals past body, sorry, JSON dot pass. I want to make it an array. I want to make it a JavaScript object. What did you call this during the last class? I think it's object, something has to do with object. Okay, we just said joke. Okay. So what we call it is joke updates, right? And I think we've fulfilled what we have in the third item. So let's console log at this point if we are on the right track. So I'm going to console log joke update. All right. So let's do patch. All right, and then so there's an error. So let's see where the error might be. So where are you? Hold down. Joke update is not defined. How come? Joke update. Oh, let's see. I need to do it in here. All right. So I was trying to get it outside its scope. That was the problem. So if we go again, you see that we have it here. All right, so that's good. That's encouraging. So the next thing we want to do is, I think I've fulfilled that. Have we? Listen for when chunks have been read, convert it to JavaScript. Okay, so what we want to do now is, so let's get, so at this point, so we can call this 3A. You can always update your pseudo code. Say, get ID of joke to update. All right. So that's what I did here, determine ID. But we can't do it outside. We can, but it will be nice if we do it inside. All right. So let's put it inside. So determine that. I think we'll just leave it for. So determine that. So how do we determine that? All right, so we're going to get our request URL because we want that ID to be passed like this. All right, so we want to get the URL. So I'm going to say rec.url. All right, so let's call it update ID is equal to rec.url. So let's console log the update ID. So now if I send, you see that we should, so I'm supposed to, we should be getting 1. Where is our 1? Where are thou? So, rec, no, not URL, sorry. Yeah, URL. Of course, URL. You are what I want. So patch. So it's not giving me anything, even though I should have this. So let's check. Oh. So go back. So we're saying that if the URL is equal to just /. All right. So we want to say that if URL, so let's think of it well. If URL is, I don't want to say 1 now, we have to make it dynamic. Okay. So if URL greater than, so URL, this is, so this is, we have to split the URL and then determine if it is more than this. Right. So I'm coming, I need to take this call very quickly, very important. I'll get back to us. All right, sorry guys, I have really had to take that call. So let's proceed. So where were we? Yeah, so we want to not just search for /, right? We want to be sure that it has something added to it. Okay. The easiest way I can do it right now is just to even get rid of this condition and it will work. So you see that we can get our 1 now. All right, it will work. But that's like handling all patch that comes into our server, all right? That's like handling all patch requests that comes to our server. Another thing we could do is, oh, this makes sense. I'm thinking of how Express handles their request. So what we could do is to say that if the request comes to, so we'll say if the request .url is equal to /. So we handle everything concerning / in here. All right. So I'm going to copy everything you see here. Wow, that's nice. All right, I'll put it in here, and then inside the if is get, so that if it requires a method is post, and if it's patch, then do patch. So I think this is good. If I run this code again, it should still work. So let me check. It's not working. Why are you not working? Patch. Yeah. Oh, I see. You still have the same problem. Celebrate in vain. All right, so let's go back to what we had before. Some of you get it, but if you don't, it's not a problem. All right, so now let's solve this problem that we had. So how do we determine that there's something else attached to the URL? So what I'm going to simply do is that I will say if request.url, okay, because it's a string, right? I can split the string .split, all right? And then when I split it using this, it's going to give me an array, okay? And I'm going to say if the first guy is /. So that's what I just did now. Let me see if it works. So it works, all right? So I've succeeded in doing that. There might be better ways, but you can do that on your own. Obviously, you don't have the luxury of time, okay? So what I do is I just split and say if the first guy is a / and it's patch, then use this to handle the request. All right. Definitely this would not take care of all edge cases, but yeah, we're actually just learning HTTP. We'll use Express to handle all this, starting from next week, we'll start doing Express. All right. So here, we're here now. So what I want to do is the ID. How do I get the ID? I'll get the ID from just what I did here. But in this case, we'll be taking the second guy, which is 1. All right, and if we run our request, we should get 1. So that's the ID. All right, but since I know it's going to be a string, let me check type. It's a string, so I know it's going to be a string, and I don't want a string. I'm going to convert it to a number. All right, so that is it. We now have the ID. So what do we want to do with the ID? I want to search for, the data in the DB to be updated. So I can do it in here. Search for the data in the DB. So what I'm going to do is we're going to be saying DB. So DB dot find index. That's a value. That value syntax. So let's see. Okay, yes, find index. We get the value. Let's see the value. Let's do item. All right, item. If the item.id is equal to our ID, then return it. All right, so we're going to say search for the data in the DB, right? So the data in the DB, that should be very simple. Though. You don't need to find index. So I want to say data to update is equal to, yeah. So data, let's just say data index equal to db.find index. So let's check the data index. That would be this. So let's make a request. There's an error. ID is not defined. So we should use update ID. All right. So if I make a request, I get 0. That's the index of the data. So what do I want to do with that index? I'm going to say data db data index should be equal to. I'm going to spread the old db data index and then spread the update. So the update coming from the user is joke update, right? So say joke update. All right, so that would be this. All right, and after doing that, I want to respond the son.stringify what are we JSON update. So you return the updates, the joke update. All right, and we should be good. So you can write head. I've not been doing that, but you should write head. All right, in this case will be 201. All right, is it 201 for updates? No, this is created. So we can use 200. Just use 200. Okay. So now let's try again. So I'm going to stop my server and start it again. So npm start. Server is running well. No errors at this point. So let's try. So if we get, right, we're supposed to be getting this because that's what we have currently. It's persistent now, remember. So that's why when I stopped and started my server, we still had them. So let's change the first guy, right? The first guy. We're going to change it to I'm going to change it to the first guy, right? So we have to specify the ID and it has to be patched because it's an update. So we want to change it to something. So the name is going to be not so funny Joker. All right. So I'm going to send the request and you see we get the updates first, not so funny, a Joker. And if we go to get and get, no, sorry. So I'm going to terminate this request and we're getting like this. All right. So you see that the first guy has been updated to not so funny, a Joker. All right. So we are able to read, get, we are able to update, post, that's create a new joke. All right. We create a new joke and the ID is being updated. And we were able to patch to update a joke. So we can even say author. Okay. Or would be Rema. That's the only name I know in this class apart from Patrick. Update, so that's Rema. Update. So if we go back to get, and get, you see that we now have So the author was not added. It's supposed to be added. So let's see. Why was the author not updated? Let's try again. Oh, I might have missed something, the ID. Great. So if we do that again, come back to get, run it without the ID. All right. You see that we now have this guy with author grammar. All right. So our read, our create, our read, and our update works. And delete. Might. So thank you guys for your time. I hope this has been recording since, because I'm just hearing recording in progress. I don't want to believe that we lost anything. So I'm going to get your questions. If you have questions, you can ask at this point.
Hello, see.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for this. It was good, great. So I want to ask a question. It's supposed to be two, but I can't remember the other one now. So what does it mean to persist a data to a file?
Okay, it means to make it persistent. So what that term, right, is
So
simply
so
used
persistent
to
in the literal sense means so that something doesn't go away, like to continue.
exactly. So
So
yeah,
that's
so that
saying
term is
let's
used
you're
to,
you're persisting the data like it shouldn't go away.
exactly. That's right. Because if we don't, if we're making use of a file, so to change how this whole thing behaves, I could just get rid of this and make it an object, not an array. All right. So in this case, this would be persistent because every time we stop our server and restart our server, right, we will lose any change that we make to this array. You get the point?
Okay. Yeah, yeah,
But now that we're storing it to a file, all right, now that we're storing it to a file, it is coming to this file. So the data in this file would not, change, right? Whether we stop
mm,
our server, start our server, the data is going to be persistent, all right?
okay.
So that's
So
what
so does it like store the current state, like each current state in the data? So I'm assuming the data is not a hard coded something, takes in, let's say when multiple users make requests. I don't know if that is what it means by getting the data.
So when you make requests, you are always updating this data.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. So the data is already, it's like, okay, our database.
I'm always updating this data. I don't know why I'm not seeing the author updates now. That might be a bug, but you can check it out. We'll run out of time. So somebody can try to fix it. Maybe I'll push this to GitHub and share the URL so you can look through the code, make
Thank,
fixes,
thank you very much. That would be
handle,
helpful.
yeah, you're welcome. Handle edge cases and stuff like that. So any other question before we call it a day?
Yes, please. Yeah, I wanted to ask, um, in JavaScript, you said we could use like for strings, you can use the one either the double or the single column. So, but why is that when I'm when you're creating like a JSON file, you can't use, I tried using the single, but it wasn't working when you're writing like the title, description, and a response. I don't even understand my question.
So yeah, I understand you. I understand your question. So that is the JSON format, right? In fact, I think it's a very good question because I've not really thought about that. I've not given that much thought. But I think it could depend on two things. Number one, which I do not believe, JSON does not support single quotes. I don't believe that, right? So we'll have to find out together now. And number two, what's it called now? Your configuration for your editor, right? Your editor might be expecting double quotes according to how it is configured, all right, for JSON. So these editors, there's a way they read different file types. They might be expecting that you use double quotes instead of single quote. All right. These are two possibilities. Do you understand? So your answer is in one of them. But let's check online. Does JSON support single quotes? JSON framework must be constructed with double quotes. Double quotes within strings must be escaped with backslash. So you get your answer. This is the answer. All right, from OpenAI Developer Forum.
Thank
All
you.
right, so for example, single string, blah, 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 blah. A single string or number would be valid. So you can do more, right? You can go to Mozilla, you can do more research to get what the actual answer is. But from this, it says that it supports double quotes. It must be double quotes, all right? So yeah, there you go. Somebody was about to say something. Okay.
Okay, sorry, one more. For this assignment that we have, this the one for working with NodeJS Server API, I think one of the instructions he said we shouldn't like include auto-created files like package.json. But then I thought like for it to be like a Node.js
We should what?
okay, like in the instruction you said we shouldn't include like auto-created files like package.json, right? But I thought like with Node.js
Can't get you.
can you hear me?
Yeah, you said what?
Okay, I'm talking about the assignment, the one working with Node.js Server API, right? Amongst the instructions, it's said we shouldn't include all the auto-created files like package.json. So what I'm asking is, I thought for a Node.js project, that sort of file should be included or something.
No. You got it wrong. You got it wrong, right? I said it should be a single file apart from those other Node.js folders. So node.modules, package.json, package.whatever is allowed. But apart from those files, what I need from you, your only custom created file should be server.js or whatever JS file. Do you understand?
Okay, I'm not sure. Wait.
So what I mean is this. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Can you see my screen? Okay. So what I mean is server.js should be the only file you create by yourself. All these other files are auto-created. Do you create them by yourself?
Oh, okay.
All
Okay.
this JSON. Yeah, so I need only server.js from you.
Okay. All right. I
And
understand.
all the other files, do you get me now? So that's what I mean.
Thank you. But we can like how in for package.json I want to edit like the we can put the stats node and all that, or we shouldn't touch anything at all in the package.json.
Sorry, I didn't get that.
Okay, I was asking, like, well, in the JSON file where we can put the stats and then what put it, for example, like NodeMon, right? But so I'm asking you, is that we don't touch anything? Yeah, like for example, this underscript, I'll put the start
No,
node.
you are taking my instruction to the extreme, right? The instruction is simple.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure, so maybe there's still, I don't like assuming. No, I think I understand now. Thank you.
The instruction is simple. Create. So to create means edit your package.json, but to create. All right. Any other question before should we add more assignment to this one where you have?
Please, let us finish this one first.
Hello, I'm asking for everybody. Any opposing answer?
At this point, so I've not even completed the old videos. This one I just joined, so at least I'll get an idea of what we're talking about. So I've not gotten to the very first Node.js video, so I know I'm a bit lost right now. But I know if I watch the videos, I'll get a hang of what you've been explaining. But please, don't add any assignment to this one.
So, please, I want to ask, is there a playlist that we can follow sequentially to meet up to everything you have taught so far? Especially the Node.js part.
Yeah, there's a playlist for that.
Okay, thank you, sir. Then another question is the parts where there's a part where you split the screen, then you can test for get, post, and other stuff. How did you get there?
Are you talking about Thunder client?
Okay. Is it a file? Yeah.
Okay, it is an extension that you install.
Okay.
Thunder client. I mentioned it in the last one.
T, I've been struggling to get mine to work.
Your Thunder client.
Yeah.
So if we install it, is there any configuration that's needed?
No, you just install and start using.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Just check online, Shai. If you still have that issue, maybe we can schedule a quick call and just look at it.
All right, I will do that.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for your time. I beg to take my leave. Enjoy your weekend.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Thank you, sir.